And welcome here to Dude, What's the Bid, episode 26. If my math is correct, that is half a year, 52 weeks in a year. Episode 26, 26 straight weeks we've been doing this. Unfortunately, Casey Larkin, my co host, is in a plane headed to Cancun, I think, at the moment. So I would just say it's me solo, but as you can see on the screen, we have the podcasting monster himself, the freight coach Chris Jolly, joining us today. How are you doing, Chris?
I am doing great, Kevin. I am ready to rock here, man. I'm excited. It's I host so many episodes that when I'm a guest, I'm kind of like I don't know how to act. So like I sometimes my responses are delayed because I naturally want to take over and start asking questions. But like I'm gonna sit back, relax, and enjoy this.
Enjoy being the guest spot because it's the funnest spot, right? You don't have to worry about anything.
Yes, correct.
Hosting is somewhat difficult because you have to manage these different things going on in the background and keeping time if you're on a timer, right? And having somewhat of an agenda, which I just never have an agenda these days. So that makes it easier. But, you know, sit back and talk about yourself.
Yeah, man. Like, here's the thing. I have never had an agenda like when I did podcasts because I've actually found it to be boring to like have structured questions because like I just like talking to people ultimately at the end of the day. I like getting to know people, getting to know their stories and everything else. And I feel like it once you can get the hard part about interviewing is getting people to like in their comfort zone where they'll start rolling. But after you've done it for a little bit, you can really get anybody talking.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you what, I was talking to somebody at the Broker Carrier Summit, which we missed you out there, but I know you were speaking at DatCon.
Yeah.
We're going to be in Indianapolis in late April and definitely want you out there. It is the coolest conference right now in freight.
Dude, it's definitely gaining all of the traction that I think Dan initially wanted when he first started it, right? And I remember when, the first one that he had put on and then how it's kind of progressed from there. I mean, it is needed out there. Like ultimately you need an environment where people can feel heard, most importantly.
Heard, you get the content, the conversations, but I think the real killer is that brokers and carrier, it was parity this event, right? Just as many brokers as carriers, and what you found, and you found that in Tampa, you found that in Kansas City, but certainly now is, and last week, deals are being done, loads are being covered on the floor. Brokers are getting new capacity, carriers were getting new lanes that they needed. And if you can do that at a conference, it's golden.
Yeah. And so like from your perspective, Kevin, what is the thing that carriers learn the most about brokers? Like what's that, man? Like what are those things? Because like I obviously I am a broker. Oh, are we like live on like LinkedIn and everything?
We're live.
Awesome.
There's good old Chandler right there. When someone says they don't have an agenda, they probably have an agenda.
Correct.
Of course, yes, I do have an agenda. Make more sales.
Oh man, that's funny. But no, I think like, because obviously I'm actively broker, I have a truck delivering at this moment. And we try our like we're not perfect, but we try our absolute best to make sure that our drivers are taken care of because like I mean realistically our drivers are our customers as well. Even though I'm paying them, that's irrelevant to me because they're a direct reflection of me to my customers, right? So it's like I want to set them up for success and I want them to feel heard and I want to go the extra mile for them out there so that retention's there, right? Because I feel like anybody can find a customer and move one load. Like ultimately, I'm not saying it's easy to find that one customer, but like anybody can ultimately find that customer, move that one load. But can you do it repeatedly? Can you scale it? Can you do it more than one time? That's where it comes in. And, I don't like talking about the, whatchamacallit, the perfect world scenarios that a lot of people like to focus in on because ultimately, how are you going to react when it's your truck that's running late? Or how are you going to react when there's damage to the product and everything else? And that's where having partner carriers really will always, they're worth its weight in gold. It's like the Southeast just got slammed with storms. I know it's been like a lifetime ago to some people, but there's facilities out there. One of the ones that we work with that they didn't have power for 2 weeks, right? So it's like, how are you dealing with that in those moments with your carriers if they have freight that's supposed to deliver in there? And that's where working with core carriers are always going to be worth its weight in gold.
It is having that trust, that transparency, that true partnership, right? You can't do that with one and done carriers. And I think one of the big questions carriers have about brokers, they're two different business models, right? That they really are, and sometimes brokers do some things that irks carriers, right? But the brokers kind of just need to do that. And I think this was in Kansas City actually, that came up in one of my sessions is, the blind pickups, right? Kind of, being hesitant about releasing, because, you might get backdoored by the carrier, you might introduce fraud into the system, and just explain the reasons why you do things that as a broker, sometimes that I don't want to say aren't transparent, but they could be looked upon as a little bit shady or kind of, well, you don't trust me, and I have to pull pull information from you. But if you can explain why you're doing that, at least the carrier at that point, oh, okay, I understand that, so then I can navigate those waters, right? I can handle those objections that the broker has before they even have it, and it's a better working relationship.
I personally feel, Kevin, that if you're a broker and you feel like you can't tell a carrier all the information, you booked the wrong carrier on the load.
Oh, you did. You absolutely did, right? Yeah. And it goes back to the core carriers, the repeat business, right?
Yeah.
You get those, and I loved repeat carriers when I was a broker, right? Because I'm kind of lazy.
Yeah.
And well, hear me out, right? I'm kind of lazy, right? I don't want the stress and the headaches of babysitting or trying to babysit a carrier, right? Not that they need babysitting, but I try to do that. But if I have core carriers, it's almost like I'm just moving paper from the shipper to the carrier, and I don't really have to worry about too much else. And I can go back to doing more productive things than trying to micromanage a carrier, right? Because I think that's when micromanaging comes in, right? Is when you don't trust the other party to do what they say they're doing. So if you're doing a lot of one and done carriers, you're doing a lot of micromanaging, right? You're making 20 check calls a day because you just don't know what to expect. But if you work very consistently with the carrier, you don't have to worry about it. You pay them a little bit more sometimes, sometimes it goes in your favor in the pricing. Sometimes it goes against your favor in some ways. But it's consistent, predictable. I think that's the big key, right? Predictability. We all want predictability, and how do we get to predictability?
But I also feel like that's the only way you can actually scale your brokerage is by using the same carriers time and time again. Like, I mean, dude, we do like 100 loads a month on one lane, and our drivers are texting the receiver. Like, oh, did I lose you?
A little bit. I don't know if I lost you or you lost me. Who knows about my internet? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're good. It's okay. Yeah, we're all good now. But no, I like an example that I use, Kevin, is we move the same load. We probably move the same lane about 100 times a month on one lane. We use the same 2 to 3 carriers for 90% of them, and they have a relationship with the receiver. We're like, they text them, they do all of that. Like, my business isn't at risk of me losing the business, and I don't feel threatened. I actually want that because that makes me look so much more appealing as a broker to my customer. And I have the conversations to back it up that my customers say, hey, we love the way that you communicate with us. We love how your drivers operate. The drivers feel like they're in on it. There's no hidden agenda. There's none of that stuff going on. There's that open flow of communication, right? Ultimately. And because like as a broker, that's all I really have to offer. Like, I don't care what any of these brokers try and fucking. I'm sorry, I don't. Is it cool? Is it cool if I say
it's fine with me?
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why people try and spice up what we're doing. As Joe Dirt, as I said to Joe Dirt back in the day, don't try and spice it up, Dirt. Like, we are, as a freight broker, my number one job is communication, right? That is my number one job. I got to communicate with my shipper, my receiver, my carrier, and that's it. Because that's what you can't ever fail in. You can have a bad day, a bad month, bad week of service, whatever it is. You cannot have a bad day of communication, though. Yep. And if you can deliver that time and time again, it's amazing how predictable this job can be.
And every great book of business is and brokerage, but book of business on the salesperson side is built off that. You can't build it any other way.
Correct. It's consistency. Like, ultimately, that's what you need to develop as a broker. You need consistency. You need a consistent price to your customer, a consistent price to your carrier, and consistent communication and service. If you can balance out consistency in this transaction, in due time, you can grow and scale a profitable organization.
You can, and that's the only way you can make it through it too, because that spot market lifestyle is going to eat you up.
Oh, it's going to kill you
very quick. There's nothing worse than that. And I think back to the Broker Carrier Summit, I think it's people taking the time out of their day, their work, their schedule, right, to come into a certain city, Dallas or Fort Worth being this go round of it, and sitting down and spending the time, right? Mm-hmm. Spending the time investing in themselves. You just find quality partners here.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly it, right? And I think ultimately you need to bring just basic conversations back into it, right? Because that like I said, again, I'm going to harp on communication, because ultimately that's just the biggest thing. That's the only time you will never be able to figure something out, is when parties stop communicating with each other. And
exactly right.
I, as a natural hothead, because I naturally want to blow a gasket at times, I have realized that in all the situations I've been in, I've had pretty much everything happen, from truckloads getting stolen to drivers getting arrested to a lot of shit, right? And why those scenarios got out of hand is because we stopped communicating. Yeah. But if you can keep that, I mean, honestly, I feel like the best piece of advice I can give is swallow your fucking ego and just get the job done. Bitch about it after the fact, but just get the job done, get it resolved, get the load delivered or whatever that is, and you'll be better off in the long run.
And I think, and part of the why communication is so important, and why I think it is that I used to call it my get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
Right. If you just always over communicate, then, bad things happen. You just deal with it and go on, I mean, sometimes it is life threatening, but most of the time it's not life threatening. Life goes on. Life is going to go on. The sun's going to come out tomorrow. Just go through it, bite the bullet sometimes. Sometimes you screwed up, and you just bite the bullet on that. And sometimes the carrier or the shipper screwed up, and you kind of bite the bullet with that as well, and you take the blame for it. And there's nothing better really than taking the blame when everybody knows it's not your fault, but you still take the blame, and people do appreciate that.
Yeah. Most people are just looking for accountability and really just kind of like step up in a lot of those instances, right? And it's more of, because you also got to think, sometimes maybe your customer has never been in a situation like this before, or they've been in these situations and most people shy away, where I'm just like, I operate my best when my back's against the wall. So I'm like, fuck it, let's talk. What do we got to do? All right, here's my professional suggestions on how we handle this. You let me know how you want to handle it, and then I'll go from there. I'll talk to my carriers, and we'll get it figured out.
Yeah. I don't know if it actually goes back to this, but I'm going to bring it back to this. We're talking about podcasting and doing a lot, not having an agenda. I don't know about. I'd like to get your opinion on this, because I have my own opinion, because I had to do a lot of live on air stuff, ill prepared to do it. But you adapt to it. One of the things that I think, one of the biggest skills that I learned from it is listening, right? We're talking about carrying, not having pre-prepared questions, having a conversation, and there's nothing as scary when you first start doing it as not knowing what to say on live TV or whatever, right? But then you get used to it, and all of a sudden you can carry on any conversation because you're just listening. That's all you're doing.
No, that's exactly it, right? Like, I think as I have interviewed more and more people, I think I'm right there with you. I think my active listening has increased exponentially. My wife probably doesn't agree with that statement. She's like, "Bullshit, you listen." But I think though it is because as you're interviewing people, and this is the exact, like, this has helped me with cold calling exponentially as well, where I know how to ask probing questions now to get somebody talking. And then on top of that, I'm listening to them because, like, you can tell based on the tonality of somebody's voice how they're answering what's important to them and what's not. And, and I feel like you also need to be open to the fact, like, you got to keep the conversation going at times, but you also got to know when to stop the conversation. You also, like, I think that's a superpower that a lot of people need to learn how to develop, whether they're giving a presentation, a meeting, recording a podcast, or speaking. You got to know when to end it. And I think that is the most invaluable skill that anybody, if you want to host a podcast, you got to know when to end that conversation.
Brevity is, I know there's a saying about it. I can't remember what it is right now, but brevity is essential. Everyone loves brevity. You might want to.
Word.
And Chandler's back here. We have less than 10 shipments a year with detention because of our communication with carriers and drivers, and that's another big boom to great communications. You resolve problems with it, right? But you're very proactive in keeping problems out of your pipeline by communication, right?
Yep.
It drives those problems right down the drain.
Yep. No, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. So was it last week? Because I saw your post on LinkedIn, and it was a terrific post. It was probably about the time you were going to go on stage at DatCon, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that was last week or the week before. But your journey, which is great, and I've had a front row seat watching it the entire time, which has been fantastic. And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's I want to do my absolute best to document a lot of what's going on. I want to talk as much as I possibly can. Like, my business partner's kind of been like, dude, you got to tone it down on some of our shit because it's like proprietary, but I don't realize it at times. But I just want to document the real journey of, like, what I've gone through. Right. And some people tune in now, Kevin, and they see a pretty sweet setup. They see a really nice mic and, a phenomenal camera. They see, like, oh, he's speaking at all these events. He's doing all
your overnight success.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
I want them to remember that I started it on my bedroom, right? Like, I had, and I was, we had just moved to Arizona. I was renting an apartment. I did everything out of my bedroom. And I wish I would have taken a photo of my calendar. And by calendar, I mean the whiteboard that I bought when I first started. And to me, it was showing how I started with a little whiteboard from Walmart, and I wrote out every hour from 7 a.m. till 3 p.m. on it. And I only had 2 things slotted a day on there. And that was post video, create video. And that was it. Right. And it took a very, very long time to really feel like I had something going. It took a lot of episodes. Like, you don't just miraculously go from 0 to 1,063 episodes. That's what I just released today, my 1,063rd podcast. Wow. And the speaking and stuff that I get invited to do, it's based on the fact that I've done this now for a very long time, but I also have a track record of what they know they will get if they invite me to come and speak at their show, right? Like, there's no me going off the rails on certain things. And that is with me speaking my unapologetic truth about this stuff, but I'm also not malicious with what I'm doing. And my focus is value driven and everything. And, I just feel like it's very important to put that out there and tell the truth, because I don't want, no matter how big this gets, Kevin, or whatever happens with this, I want people to know that it all started with one simple action, and that was just to start. And then it took some tenacity to just never quit when nobody was listening. Because I remember my first month, I had 100 downloads on my podcast in my first month. That was 4 episodes, 100 downloads. That's where it started. And it took a very long time to build it up to where I can get 100 viewers on my live show or whatever that is,
It does, right? I mean, it just do you miss those days?
Not really. Like I do. I miss like
the motivation or the urgency or the adrenaline that you have to do that.
I think I'm still kind of there with stuff, Kevin, because like I don't take any of this stuff for granted, like I don't take it for granted. Like I feel like I'm more scared now that I have like advertisers and all of this shit. I'm more scared now than I was when I first started. And I think it's because I remember what it feels like back then, that I don't take this for granted. And I know how hard I worked to get here. And I know that I got to work even harder to keep it, right? So it's like, I don't think I've lost that. I think what I would say is kind of like, I kind of miss like I'm naturally a confused person, but like kind of like I miss the how to podcast days, like when I was Googling shit and I was like on YouTube trying to figure it out, because I'm like, what is this even like? How do I edit this stuff? Like, right? What the hell am I doing here? I would say that's kind of what, if anything, I kind of miss that. And like, and then feeling that, holy shit, it clicked. Like, damn, I just edited my first video and it doesn't look like complete shit, like that. I would say I miss that.
Yeah. I miss the early days with my first business and stuff, and just like how clueless I was, and just even today, right? And I'm sure you feel like you just kind of described it, right? Is that I get the most nervous and fearful and anxiety whenever I lift my foot off the pedal.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, that's when, when I have it full throttle, it's great. I love it. I love that kind of stress. Right. But, you ease up a bit, even just a bit. And I start becoming worried and crazy.
Yeah, I have like I don't want to call it a panic attack, but like if I look at my schedule or if I look at my our load count or anything like that, I just fucking get so much anxiety, Kevin. And it's funny because it's like I take about 10 minutes to breathe a sigh of relief when I look at my year-end numbers and my year-end results. I'm like, oh shit, I grew. And then that lasts for all of 10 minutes. I'm like, fuck, what about next year now?
I know, right?
I gotta get
the world,
But I feel like that hustle, though, that's what's required, man. Like
it is.
I don't know if I'm ever going to sit back and ever think that I'm like good, like in business, and that, and I might have, 15 locations and 1,500 employees or whatever. I don't think I'm ever going to feel like I'm good. Well, and I think it will always go back to, I remember day one, $1 when nobody listened. Nobody wanted to talk to me. I couldn't get anybody. Like I'll always remember that.
Yeah. You always have to, because I mean, those are good times and bad times. But the bigger you get, the more money, more problems, more people, more problems, man. It's just the cycle, but it's hard to ease off of that.
No, I agree. I agree with that. And I'll probably feel my first sense of accomplishment when I'm like able to pay off my house. Then I'm going to be like, it's sick. Like that's a really big goal of mine. A really, really big goal is to be debt free and to be able to look my wife in the eyes and say, baby, it was all worth it. You don't have to work ever again if you don't want to. Like that. That's like a very, very big goal. That's probably my number one priority in all of it. And that's what really keeps me going in a lot of those situations is I want to look my wife in the eyes and tell her, you never have to work ever again if you don't want to.
It's a good goal. It's a great goal. That is. And hopefully you'll get there very soon.
Yeah, I hope so too.
But yeah, no, like but I remember very vividly your days of in your bedroom, and every single day you posting a video. 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But you know that consistency goes back to carriers and brokerage and business. That consistency, that predictability, and the slow grind of going from no viewers to 100 viewers, so 200 viewers, 300. It's a long, slow grind.
I think people want the end result, but they don't want to actually go through the process of what it really takes, right? Because, you know, and this is why I, you know, on my show, when I'm talking about it, like, I feel like, and I just put a post out about this the other day. I feel like the true magic in all of this is you seeing yourself get better in your day to day, right? And it's like I look at it from a sales perspective as well. Everybody like, oh, they put this arbitrary number out. Oh, you got to make 100 cold calls a day. I can dial my phone 100 fucking times, Kevin, but does that mean I'm going to have an actual conversation? No, it doesn't, right?
No.
But are you going to be able to do that every single day, no matter what? Because you naturally hit these ebbs and these flows where I feel like anybody, if you're going to start cold calling, start with 5. Start with 5 calls in a day. And again, you can, this is an arbitrary number here. Start with a number that you know you can hit. And your barometer of success is what if 5 calls took you an hour and a half, the barometer of success is showing a W when those 5 calls take you an hour. And then those 5 calls take you 30 minutes. And then you add more work onto it because it's building up that discipline of doing it every single day, no matter what. Because inevitably, if you do it long enough, you're going to hit a point where you're moving 10 loads in a day now, and you're still hitting 35 or 40 cold calls every single day because you're never good in business. And that's what it was for me early on creating content. Was it was more important to do the work every single day, no matter what.
Yeah.
Now those disciplines are there. Like, I go live 5 days a week now for 30 minutes every single day on top of moving freight. Okay. Like, on top of making cold calls, right? We move freight every single day. I make cold calls every single day. I've done that because I've built the disciplines up over time to know that I have the time. Like, I don't ever look at my schedule and I'm like, oh, I can't do that. I'm like, no, I got to get better. Where it's like, I got to start earlier. I got to fit in calls. Like, dude, I made 15 calls right before we got on this show today, because I didn't know that we were doing this live. And I'm like, I want to talk about some real feedback on my cold calls. But it's like, I hit those numbers every single day now, no matter what, because it's more important to build the discipline on a daily basis to hold yourself accountable in the long run. Anybody can make 100 calls one time. Anybody can do that. But are you going to do it day in and day out when the natural burnout of the rejection and the negativity and the negative thoughts come in? Are you going to hit that every single day? Or are you going to find a reason to be like, oh, I made 100 calls on Monday, I'm good for the rest of the week? No, you got to do it every single day and set that benchmark and hold yourself to that every single day, no matter what.
You do. It's a long game, right? I think that's the moral of the story. I'm like, you know, going back to your early days of podcasting and seeing the evolution, right? I mean, when it comes to podcasting and video, I kind of lucked into a great spot, right? But there were about 3 or 4 years of, you know, kind of pre-video and podcasting, just marketing and sales and building a product or a business to get myself into that spot. And it's a long game, you know. Nothing, you start a business. I think that's what a lot of people who haven't done it don't really realize is it's usually a couple years before you can really actually pay yourself.
People don't realize how fucking hard it is to get it off the ground and running, because when you start a job, for example, when you're working for an established company, you're starting into a proven system at that point. you are going out there and you're starting inside of an organization that has already had success in getting there. To get it from 0 to 100 is very challenging. And but then on top of that, it's the development of the processes. It's the development of the systems. It's like, hey, is this actually working? Because anybody can sit here and talk shit in front of a camera, but can that actually work in the real world? And can you back that up with real results, right? Because theory, everybody's got a fucking opinion, man. Everybody's got a theory about what they think they might do in that moment. But until your entire revenue has been cut off and you have no money and you got to literally grind it out for that first $100, until you've been in that situation, with all due respect, I don't want to hear your opinion on what you think you might do.
I agree totally. And then once you get to the 100 mark, right? Yeah. You see this in all businesses, right? It's almost like you're starting over again to get to 200, right? You're going all in once again, and it's even a bigger risk, even bigger rewards, but even a bigger risk, right? And at the time, you especially in this industry, you have a lot of debt, right? You have a lot of working capital. You have a lot of things that you have put on the line, and you got to do it all over again. So it's. If you get a job in most businesses, it's a pretty proven system. Building that into that scale is the hardest and most rewarding thing too, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and everything's a risk too, right? Like once you start getting revenue to come in, are you going to properly allocate those funds, right? And I feel like if you're going to take business, if you're going to listen to anybody in the business world out there, like this is why I'm such a massive fan of a guy like Andy Frisella, the Real AF podcast. He started First Form. And then Supplement Superstore, he talks about this stuff, right? Like he talks about now he's at a level in business where he's never been before. So he doesn't know all the answers. And those are the type of people that you get, right? Because how you operate to make your first $100,000, for example, is not going to get you to 200,000 or $1 million or so on and so forth, right? Like you have to learn, you have to get better. And then especially when it's your capital that's on the line, because you're going to mess up, you're going to spend money wrong, you're going to invest it in the wrong things, and then you're going to be back to square one, right?
You are. Yeah. And we got Chandler here again, fellow DFW guy here. Our business started similar to a lemonade stand. Process gets better and the marketing gets better every day, and it's just continuous improvement. You're exactly right. Just continuous improvement, hitting that pavestone, grinding it out, and that's what you have to do. I think it's Nate Schutz, who he always tells a story about his boss or whatever, and shows up whatever that number is. It's just like I've never been the owner of $100 million company before. 100, and the next day I've never been CEO of a $101 million business. It's all new, right? And that's where a lot of people, they have it figured out. No, they don't have anything figured out
at all. It's funny. It's funny that this conversation's gravitating towards this, because I was talking to a friend, this morning, and it's just like, I literally told them, I'm like, there's two classifications of people out there: people who don't know shit, which is the overwhelming majority, and the people who are full of shit because they're trying to tell everybody that they have it all figured. Nobody's got it all figured out. Like at all. Everybody reaches new levels. Like I've never been in this position before. Right. I've never been. I'm learning how to operate like this. There's going to be new scenarios that are going to continue to pop up. But the thing is when those scenarios pop up, when those inevitable challenges pop up, you got to realize like, hey, this is actually serving me. I'm learning how to not be in this position ever again. And then that's like the true definition of don't make the same mistake twice. Kevin, is like, you got to learn from this stuff, right? Like there's been situations where I've been burnt out of a lot of money from people who owed me money. Well, guess what? I learned. I have contracts now. I have attorneys now. So it's like, there's a fucking process, and that's there because of something that had happened, right? And everybody goes in through those situations and stuff like that. And you got to learn from it, right? Because I've never been the CEO a $10 million company yet, but I'm going to be, and it's all of that stuff. And that's just where it is you got to approach. And that's why I invest so much in myself outside of work, right? Like I'm out there, I'm in an entrepreneur group, I'm surrounding myself, I'm talking to other business owners. I'm very fortunate to be in the position that I'm in. And I want to talk to people who've been down this path already. And then, on top of that, like the content that I consume outside of everything, like I'm constantly either listening to an audiobook, listening to podcasts, or reading books on business, on self-development, on health, on all of that, because ultimately, like I am the product, right? Whether it's the podcast or the freight brokerage, I am the product. And I need to be able to find and become the most elite version of myself to go out there and sustain the highs and the lows, the travel, all of that. I need to show up every single day, but I also need to consume the right information to know that everything that I'm going through, when it seems like I can't figure it out, the right podcast hit. And then I hear from a guy who's like, no, I lost $15 million and I was going to be bankrupt. And then I woke up the next day and said, I'm not going to quit. And then I figured it out, stuff like that. Yeah. It makes your problems not feel so bad in the moment.
You're right about that. It makes you feel fortunate. And, the people who are out there who are the most critical, the harshest critics, are the ones who have never been in that position and have no intentions of ever doing it.
Yeah.
And, the peanut gallery. Almost, right?
Yeah. I do a really good job on drowning them out. Like I've adopted a very simple approach to life, Kevin. I do not take fitness advice from somebody who is in worse shape than me. I do not take business advice from somebody who is not a business owner and further ahead than me. And I do not take financial advice from somebody who has less money than me. I've just adopted those three strategies. Yeah. And the peanut gallery that you brought up is very quiet. Yeah. Now that I've adopted that, right? Because, again, it's not like some of these people's intentions are bad, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. But again, there's a big difference between theory and application. Everybody's got an opinion, but very few apply it for a long enough time where they see results.
You're exactly right. You got to drown out those voices.
Yeah, because otherwise it's very consuming, right? Like you can pull up social media at any given moment and see somebody posting about how perfect they are or everything else, and they're not. They're full of shit. Yeah. They are. Because nobody's got it all figured out. Nobody is that perfect that makes all the right decisions at all times. Because trust me, if they did, they wouldn't be on fucking LinkedIn posting about it. They would be doubling down and tripling down and making even more money.
That they would. That they definitely would. Let's say, when's your next event? Where are you headed off to next?
Probably going to be next year sometime, unless something pops up. Like I try and limit my travel at this point. I'll be going out and visiting some of our customers in person to wrap up the year, some of our shippers. But conference wise, I don't have anything on the schedule right now coming up. And a lot of that is man, I got to focus on the business, right? Ultimately, and it's tough to get out there and travel. That's why I enjoy bunching it up together in a few week stretch, because now I know that now that I'm home, I know I'm going to be home for the next 4 weeks or 6 weeks and I can get back into my routine. But then I know when I'm traveling, I got a different process for that and I attack my business in a different way. Yeah. So I just try and limit it as much as possible, unless I can double dip, right? Unless I can double dip and we're like, hey, I'm going to speak at this conference and I have shippers or a prospect in the area. That's a win-win at that point. And then I won't say no to that.
You never say no to double dipping or triple dipping, quadruple dipping. That's what it's called, efficiencies. It really is. Well, Chris, thanks for stopping by. For our audience out there, they want to check out your podcast. For those that don't know where to find it, it's the Freight Coach, right? To wherever you download podcasts.
Yeah, the Freight Coach podcast. You can find me on iTunes and Spotify. You can find the Freight Coach live stream on YouTube. Literally, if you and I got to credit you for this, Kevin, because you told me that early on. You said get the same name on everything. So I literally, since day one, have been the freight coach on everything social media. You can Google the freight coach, and there's like 3 pages of shit now.
Exactly. It works out beautifully. And it was a great concept when you started doing it. I guess it's been about 4 years now.
It's been over 4 years, man.
Over 4 years.
Like 4.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Time flies by. It really does. It does. It does. But yeah, go check out your podcast. You're on LinkedIn. Do you do LinkedIn Live every day?
Yeah, it streams live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and I know people have a very tough time on finding it on LinkedIn for some reason. I don't know why. But
it's LinkedIn.
Yeah, dude, it's a wild platform. But
yeah,
YouTube, everybody who has watched me on LinkedIn that's gone over to YouTube has said the stream is exponentially better on YouTube. So I'm really trying to push everybody over there. So if you check me out on YouTube and you're not subscribed, as always, you guys subscribe on there.
Will do. And so the great thing about StreamYard is that you can do it on both at the same time, and Twitter and everything. So it's good. I've been talking about 2 times a week. I think I need to do 5 afternoons of 30 minutes.
Absolutely.
Live, just to keep the just consistency and just hitting it, and I enjoy it. So
hell yeah, man. Do it.
You have to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy doing something, you're never going to be consistent at it.
Yeah.
So figure out what you enjoy doing and go do it.
I love it. 100% agree, man.
Cool. Well, Chris, thanks again, and keep on rocking.
Will do.